Welcome back, everyone, to the journey of discovering 100 facts about the Ice Age, one of the harshest, most mysterious, and most majestic eras the Earth has ever experienced. Today, let your body relax. Imagine yourself stepping into a world where ice blankets entire continents, where cold winds sweep across endless steppes, where gigantic creatures, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, giant ground sloths, struggle to survive day after day in a frozen arena. Have you ever wondered, why did the Earth once become so cold that ice covered more than 30% of its surface? Which animals ruled this frozen world? How could these gigantic creatures survive temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius? And what truly ended the Ice Age, opening the dawn of modern humankind? In this journey of 100 facts, we will dive deep into the science of climate, the anatomy of prehistoric animals, the mysterious ecosystems buried beneath the ice, and the final moments of an era that shaped our planet. Imagine, under a pale sun, snow falls like threads of icy silk. Beneath meters of frozen ground, young taiga forests tremble in the wind. Herds of mammoths move like colossal walls of fur. Smilodons stalk in the shadows, their saber-like fangs gleaming like the ivory blades of an ice god. And primitive humans, our distant ancestors, kindle tiny flames in a world thousands of times larger than themselves. The Ice Age was more than just a climatic period. It was a story of survival, a symphony of harshness, and a grand stage where the mightiest creatures ever known confronted nature in its purest form. In these 100 facts, you will witness how climate shifts formed ice sheets kilometers thick, how giant creatures evolved to become masters of the cold, the battles between saber-toothed cats and Ice Age bison, the great migrations of mammoths and giant moose, the mysteries of Paleolithic humans, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, the forces that ended the Ice Age, and finally, the legacy it left behind for the world we know today. When you are ready, we will step into fact number 1, the beginning of a 100-chapter journey. Remember, the Ice Age was not only cold, it was life within the cold. It was light, gently blooming amid ice and wind. Time, like a quiet flowing river, constantly rewrites itself across every era. And there are moments when that flow seems to slow down, as if the heart of the earth is contracting, preparing to step into a frigid age that would last tens of thousands of years. That was when the Ice Age began. The Earth does not orbit the Sun in a perfect circle. Its orbit is an ellipse that changes over cycles, at times pulling it closer to the Sun, and at other times pushing it farther away. The tilt of Earth's axis is not fixed either. It wobbles between 22 degrees and 24.5 degrees over thousands of years. These very small changes, known as the Milankovitch cycles, created an unexpected effect. The amount of sunlight the Earth received gradually decreased, very slightly, very subtly, yet enough to alter the entire planet. It is like placing a small block of ice in front of a cold draft. At first it frosts just a little, but then the frost spreads, strengthens, and eventually covers the whole surface. The Earth was the same. Winters grew just a little longer. Snow melted just a little slower. Ice lingered on the ground just a little more. Those little changes, multiplied over thousands of years, created an era. During the lengthened winters, snow blanketed the northern lands. But here was the crucial detail. Old snow had not melted before new snow fell on top of it. Layer upon layer accumulated meters, then tens of meters, then hundreds. The immense weight compressed the lower layers, turning them into solid ice, as if pressing the entire white sky down onto the Earth. Once the thickness reached hundreds of meters, these ice masses began to move. They did not stand still. They crawled forward, crushing everything beneath. Forests, mountains, valleys. From Canada to northern Europe, from Siberia to Alaska, gigantic ice sheets the size of nations began to cover the land. The Ice Age had opened its first act. As the great ice sheets expanded, they reflected sunlight back into space. More ice, less sunlight absorbed. Earth grew colder, more ice formed. A self-reinforcing loop, a natural cooling cycle. Northern winds became sharper, stronger. Vast forests shrank, giving way to Ice Age steppes, where short grasses clung to the ground to escape the winds. Animals were forced to adapt. Thicker fur, larger bodies, deeper layers of fat, and the world slipped into shades of grey and white, the colours of ice, of silence, of a harsh era. With water locked inside massive ice sheets, sea levels dropped more than 120 meters. Lands once submerged beneath the ocean rose again. Islands fused with mainlands. Continents connected to continents. One of the most legendary bridges appeared. Beringia, the land bridge between Siberia and Alaska. And through this bridge, early humans, mammoths, Ice Age hyenas, bison, and giant moose migrated into North America. Without the Ice Age, the history of an entire continent might have been different. Imagine yourself standing on an ancient ice sheet. Beneath your feet lies more than 2 kilometers of ice, and beneath that ice are ancient forests, valleys, rivers, all buried like forgotten memories. The Ice Age didn't just arrive, it reshaped the planet. It carved U-shaped valleys, elongated lakes formed by melting ice, like the Great Lakes of the U.S., Canada, scraped down ancient mountains, preserved the atmosphere in frozen air bubbles, and as the ice shifted, it released deep, resonant echoes, like the breathing of a colossal creature slowly moving across the continent. Those sounds, low, heavy, and distant, accompanied the Earth for more than 2.5 million years. The Ice Age was not always white with snow. There were periods when ice expanded deeply and volcanic dust dimmed the skies. There were periods when ice receded, temperatures rose, and forests spread outward. The Ice Age was the great breath of the planet. Expansion, contraction, cold, warmth, snow, sunlight, silence, vitality. Across hundreds of thousands of years, this breath repeated, writing the history of climate and evolution. Amid the grey-white plains, a small flame flickered in a cave. Following that flame were early humans, small creatures carrying a force even the Ice Age could not extinguish, the ability to adapt and create. The cold compelled humans to craft mammoth hide clothing, master fire, design spears, form communities, develop language, migrate across continents. The Ice Age did not just create giant animals, it created modern humans. It did not come in a day, not in a year. It arrived like a slow heartbeat, like the inhale of the atmosphere. And when it blanketed the Earth in white, it opened a period lasting more than 2 million years, a time when creatures evolved, when nature tested every species, and when the most epic stories of prehistory were written. If you stood atop a massive Ice Age glacier, you might think you were standing on another continent, a world that did not belong to the familiar Earth. But in truth, you would be standing on one of the greatest machines nature ever created, an ice continent. These ice masses, as wide as entire continents, did not appear in a single moment of destiny. They were built by time, cold, snow, and gravity, slowly, persistently, and silently, like the breath of the planet. And their story begins with a snowflake. Imagine a winter day, 100,000 years ago, in North America. Snow falls on a vast region, not much, just a few centimeters. But when spring arrives, the snow does not completely melt. Then the next winter, new snow covers the old. Then another winter and another year, layer upon layer. For thousands of years, like thin sheets of paper stacked one over another, eventually forming a book hundreds of pages thick. The fragile surface snow becomes compacted snow, then transforms into granular ice, and finally into glacial ice, hard, clear, and 3 times heavier than water. When snow becomes thick enough, gravity steps in. At around 30-40 meters of depth, the weight of the upper layers exerts enormous pressure on those below. Air bubbles compress, crystal structures change. Temperature and pressure rise enough to turn snow into solid ice. At hundreds of meters thick, the ice becomes plastic. It can flow, creep, and move. This is a crucial turning point. A continental glacier is not a block of ice that stands still. It is a gigantic river of ice, flowing extremely slowly, just a few centimeters to a few meters per year. And this movement gives it destructive power. A continental ice sheet is not only thick, it is wide enough to reshape the map of the world. During the peak of the Ice Age, North America, a massive ice sheet called the Laurentide Ice Sheet spread across more than 13 million kilometers squared, an area larger than the United States and Canada combined. Europe, ice stretched from Scandinavia down to northern Germany and Britain. Asia, ice covered Siberia and extended toward Mongolia. The southern hemisphere, ice blanketed South America and all of Antarctica. Where you stand in this imagined moment on the summit of a glacier might be more than 3,000 meters high. That is no longer snow. That is a second continent resting on the real one. The ice continent does not stay still. It flows slowly, but relentlessly. Massive boulders the size of trucks become embedded in its base like colossal blades. As the ice creeps forward, these blades plow through the ground, grinding mountains, tearing through rock, creating U-shaped valleys, ancient glacial lakes, plateaus, bare rock outcrops, deep glacial grooves. The entire landscapes of Canada, Northern Europe, Siberia, Mongolia, and North America still bear the unmistakable scars carved by these ice continents. Ice is a sculptor, silent, but never idle. As ice expanded, the planet entered a loop. Ice reflects sunlight. Sunlight bounces back into space. Earth absorbs less heat. Climate cools further. Ice spreads even faster. This effect made ice grow rapidly, like a flame spreading in the wind, except the flame was one of freezing cold. Once set in motion, this cycle became a frigid storm, with northern winds strong enough to drive temperatures down to 50 degrees Celsius. When ice sheets grew tall enough to become mountains of ice, they altered the surrounding atmosphere. Wind was forced upward, the air grew colder, clouds formed, snowfall increased, snow fell on ice. Ice thickened, thicker ice winds shifted further, changing winds, more snow. A perfect, ruthless cycle. The Ice Age was a chain of reinforcing loops of light, of climate, of snow, and of ice. Some scientific models show that ice continents of that era moved with enough force to erode mountain ranges hundreds of millions of years old. The amount of water locked within the ice sheets could submerge entire continents if released. At their peak, more than 80 million kilometers cubed of water was stored in ice. If all that ice melted at once, sea levels could rise more than 70 meters. Luckily, that has never happened abruptly. Within layers of ice thousands of meters thick lie ancient air bubbles, prehistoric pollen, volcanic dust, dormant bacteria, prehistoric DNA, and even the very breaths of the atmosphere from hundreds of thousands of years ago. When humans drill into Antarctic ice, they are reading the oldest pages in Earth's library. Ice continents are not merely the tombs of history, they are the history itself. Within that frigid world, the mightiest creatures ever known stepped forth. Woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, Smilodon, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, dire wolves, ancient bison, the giant antlered megaloceros. They did not merely live on the ice. They lived because of the ice, for it created ecosystems, cold steppes, low shrubs, and new lands, exposed as sea levels dropped. Ice was not only a destroyer, it was a giver of life. There was no great explosion, no sudden moment. Only each snowflake, each cold night, each winter, each layer of ice, each slow movement stretched across millennia. And then, the giant ice continents formed, giving rise to one of the most majestic chapters in Earth's history. Truth number 3. When the ocean retreated and new lands emerged, there have been moments in Earth's history when the oceans, seemingly motionless, vast, eternal, pulled back as if giving up the stage to another era. And during the Ice Age, the seas didn't retreat just a few meters, but more than 120 meters. An event powerful enough to redraw the world map, enough to create temporary continents, enough to open migration corridors that, without them, humans might never have reached the Americas. This is the story of when the ocean receded and when lands buried for millions of years suddenly surfaced beneath the frigid sky. At the peak of the Ice Age, the amount of snow and ice accumulated on continents increased exponentially. All of this water originally existed in the oceans, rainfall, rivers, and the moist layers of the atmosphere. But when the climate became cold enough to prevent snow from melting, the water became locked in ice. Not trillions of liters, not quadrillions of liters, but 40 million billion tons of water withdrawn from the oceans. As this water vanished, the sea gradually retreated, like the ocean's breath being held deep, heavy, and tense. In modern times, if you dive into many coastal regions, you will find ancient sand dunes, broad continental shelves, marks left by waves, edges of dead coral reefs. But in the Ice Age, these features rose above the water. The entire edges of continents expanded by tens to hundreds of kilometers. Areas now submerged were once dry land. The South China Sea exposed vast plains. The Gulf of Thailand nearly disappeared, leaving behind a great valley connecting Vietnam and Thailand. The region around Britain connected to Europe as Doggerland, a lush landscape now drowned beneath the North Sea. The Amazon rainforest spread to nearly twice its current size. Many islands became isolated mountains in a dry plain. Earth looked entirely different than a larger, quieter world, strangely dry. Among all the lands that emerged, none was more important than Beringia. Today, between Siberia and Alaska, lies the 5 kilometers wide Bering Strait. But during the Ice Age, sea levels were so low that the entire strait vanished, revealing a landmass of 1.6 million square kilometers, larger than modern-day Mongolia. It was a gigantic corridor linking 2 continents, and along this road migrated woolly mammoths, Ice Age hyenas, ancient bison, Arctic foxes entering North America, and especially Homo sapiens, who stepped into the New World. Each of their footsteps pressed onto the cold, dry ground of Beringia marked one of humanity's greatest migrations. When the sea withdrew, ancient river valleys as wide as the Nile appeared. Prehistoric gorges were exposed. Underground caves carved by ancient seas became dry chambers. Underwater dunes rose to form reddish land ridges. In some places, the seafloor rose so high it became frozen grassland, where herds of giant animals moved like slow rivers of fur. Imagine, where you see blue ocean today, the Ice Age held only grey-white plains, where dire wolves hunted bison, where winds sliced through clusters of cold yellow grass. The ocean's retreat revealed a world no modern human has ever seen with their own eyes. You might think the exposed seafloor would be barren, but in truth, many areas became enormous, fertile plains. Why? Mineral-rich mud, deposited over millions of years underwater, became nutritious soil, perfect for moss, tundra, grass, and shrubs. Just decades after the sea withdrew, these lands were blanketed with golden grass, attracting bison, Ice Age wild horses, giant elk, woolly rhinoceroses, and vast herds of grazing species. Life exploded. The world expanded in every direction. These new lands didn't just change the map, they opened new migration routes, created predator corridors, reshaped relationships among species. Mammoth herds could travel thousands of kilometers across the new dry lands. Big cats like Smilodon and Homotherium gained new territories. Dire wolves, massive, nearly invincible predators, spread across North America. As the sea retreated, entire ecosystems moved with it, like an orchestra finding a new stage upon which to perform. Ancient seafloors, unfamiliar with wind, suddenly faced cold northern gusts. Winds swept across the virgin plains, stirring fine dust, triggering glacial dust storms, carrying pollen, spores, and seeds, spreading life to distant regions. Dust from that ancient era still lies preserved today in sediment layers across the world. The wind became an artist, reshaping Earth with strokes of icy air. For our ancestors, the retreating sea was like receiving a ticket to new continents. They left Asia, crossed Beringia, entered Alaska, moved through North America, eventually reaching South America. Without the Bering Land Bridge, there would be no humans in the Americas. Without the lowered seas, there would be no greatest prehistoric migration. The ocean receded, opening the path for future civilizations. The lands revealed during the Ice Age were never permanent. They were only moments in the ocean of time. When the climate warmed, ice melted, water returned to the sea, and the plains flooded, valleys sank, migration routes vanished, ancient forests were buried beneath waves. What was once visible in the cold wind now remains only in the memory of earth and ice. The Ice Age teaches us that the ocean can shrink, the world can be larger than we imagine. Mysterious lands once existed. Humans can go where no footsteps remain. The retreat of the sea was not a loss. It was a rare moment when the planet opened more doors, revealed more paths, and allowed life to step into new realms. Truth number 4. The Ice Age step. The largest ecosystem of the Ice Age. If you could hover in the frozen sky 20,000 years ago, the first thing you would see would certainly not be endless sheets of white ice, but a colossal carpet stretching from Western Europe to Siberia, from Alaska all the way to northern Canada. A world without forests, without wetlands, without towering trees to cast shade. Only cold winds, dim light, and an ocean of low grass extending to the farthest horizon. Scientists call this ecosystem the Mammoth Steppe, the largest, most energy-rich, and most densely populated ecosystem Earth has ever had. It was wider than any modern grassland, richer in life than today's African savannas, and home to the most powerful beings of the Ice Age. This is the story of the cold, grassy world that sustained mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant ground sloths, wild horses, giant elk, Ice Age hyenas, and countless other legendary predators. Without forests, the wind had nothing to stop it. The wind blew day and night, sweeping through the grey-yellow grasslands, forming waves that rolled like a restless sea. The wind was the voice of the Ice Age steppe. It carried the scent of frozen soil, of snow, of mammoth fur, and even the warning smell when a predator lurked nearby. On this steppe, silence never existed. Everything whispered, everything moved, everything lived. People often think strong ecosystems require large trees, but here, low grass was king. Ice Age grasses were only a few centimeters tall, grew close to the ground to avoid the wind, had roots up to 1 meter deep to draw nutrients from cold mud, were more energy-rich than modern grass due to low CO2 levels, grew rapidly despite the cold soil. They were the energy source that fed entire herds of 3-meter-tall mammoths, endurance-built wild horses, 2-ton woolly rhinoceroses, millions of sager antelope, giant elk with antlers 7 meters wide, the powerful steppe bison, a colossal world powered by tiny organisms, grass. In this ecosystem, the mammoth was its most iconic animal. Imagine a herd of mammoths crossing the steppe, curly hair hanging down to their knees, a 10-centimeter layer of fat insulating them from the cold, long, curved tusks like great bows, feet pressing into snow, leaving deep prints behind. They migrated seasonally, eating up to 180 kilograms of grass per day. Their pathways were as wide as highways, stretching for hundreds of kilometers, ancient roads that other species followed. Without mammoths, the cold steppe would not be what we know. Ice Age horses were not like modern horses. Smaller, thicker fur, short, powerful legs, hard hooves for gripping snow, explosive sprinting speed. When hundreds ran together, the ground trembled like ancient war drums. They were the perfect prey for dire wolves, Ice Age hyenas, and sometimes even the American lion. The frozen steppe was the stage for the planet's most spectacular chases. The woolly rhinoceros was not aggressive like modern rhinos. They were quiet, patient, but their strength was unchanged, nearly 3 tons in weight. A horn up to 1 meter long, thick, reddish-brown fur, like armor. Large nostrils adapted for icy air. They cleared paths through the snow, opening routes for smaller animals. They fed on tough grasses that other species could not digest. A survival machine, silent but enduring. If you ever saw a megaloceros in the mist, you wouldn't be able to look away. Over 2 meters tall, weighing more than 700 kilograms, antlers spanning 3.7 meters like a crown of bone. On winter mornings, snow coated their antlers with a thin white layer, making them look like creatures from ancient northern legends. They lived in herds, gentle in nature, but during battles their clashing antlers boomed like distant thunder. Dire wolves were larger than modern grey wolves, with jaws 20% stronger. They never hunted alone. They used pack strategies. One group chased, one group blocked the front, one group attacked from behind. On the steppe, the strongest was not the fastest, but the best collaborator. And dire wolves were masters of cooperation. Contrary to imagination, Smilodon did not chase its prey. It ambushed. In the steppe, where there were few trees, this seemed difficult, but it knew where to hide. On raised earth banks, in upwind positions that masked its scent, in the shadows of large mammoths, or spots where horse herds were unwary. When it struck, it seized prey, using its immensely powerful shoulder muscles, stronger than modern big cats, then used its 20 cm sabers to attack vulnerable points. No predator hunted like Smilodon. It was the executioner of the Ice Age. The strangest truth is, the Ice Age steppe was more energy-rich than any modern cold ecosystem. Why? Low CO2, small but nutrient-dense plants, ancient soil packed with minerals, short summers but intense sunlight, large, active herbivores, constant ecological turnover. These are the reasons the mammoth steppe could support millions of large animals, more than the savannas of Africa today. The Ice Age steppe disappeared when the climate warmed. Grass could not withstand heat. Shrubs took over. Forests returned, reclaiming the old world, and the creatures adapted to a wide, open, cold world. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant saiga had no place left to go. The mammoth steppe vanished like a dream erased from Earth, but it still remains in fossils, frozen DNA, ancient ice, and in our imagination. When we look into the cold wind and picture mammoth herds beneath a silver moon. Fact number 5. The evolution of megafauna in the Ice Age. There were periods in Earth's history when nature seemed to scale everything up. And the Ice Age was exactly such a period. Across the cold steppes stretching from Western Europe to Alaska, colossal creatures walked through the frost like ancient gods of the primordial world. Mammoths, standing over 3 meters tall. Woolly rhinos, weighing nearly 3 tons. Giant ground sloths, as tall as a house. Megaglaciers with antlers as wide as wings. Ancient bison, with necks twice as thick as modern bison. Powerful cats and wolves, unlike anything seen today. The Ice Age created a generation of titans. Creatures with massive bodies, thick fur, specialized organs, and survival strategies beyond imagination. Here is why they became gigantic and how their bodies were redesigned to survive in the coldest places on Earth. One of the most famous evolutionary rules is called Bergmann's rule. Animals in colder climates tend to be larger than those in warmer regions. The reason is very simple. Larger bodies lose heat more slowly. Volume increases faster than surface area, reducing heat loss. Large muscle mass generates more heat. The result? Mammoths, 4-6 tons. Woolly rhinos, nearly 3 tons. Ancient bison, almost 1 ton. Megatherium ground sloth, over 4 meters tall. Saber-toothed cats, shoulders massive like slabs of rock. Cold doesn't make the world smaller, it makes it bigger. The fur of Ice Age animals was unlike modern fur. They had 2 layers. Outer layer, long, coarse, rope-like. Inner layer, short, fluffy, soft, insulating like sheep's wool. Mammoths had an extra feature, curly hair to trap warm air close to the skin, similar to modern Canada goose down jackets. Woolly rhinos had reddish-brown fur, a color that helped absorb heat in low-light environments. Ice Age horses grew upright, winter coats thicker than any human jacket. Fur was their fortress against 40 degrees Celsius. During the Ice Age, food was not always available. Winters lasted 8 and 9 months. Snow covered the land, and the wind never stopped blowing, so giant animals evolved extremely thick fat layers. Mammoths, 10-15 centimeters. Woolly rhinos, nearly 10 centimeters. Short-faced bears, bodies wrapped entirely in fat. Ground sloths, fat arranged in bundles for warming the back and belly. Fat served 3 crucial functions: insulation, energy storage, protection of internal organs from penetrating cold winds. That is why mammoth carcasses found in ice often still have intact yellow fat, thick like beeswax. At 40 degrees Celsius, the blood of ordinary animals would be in danger, but megafauna possessed a perfectly optimized circulatory system. Large blood vessels, strong flow, countercurrent heat exchange like modern reindeer, warm core blood, warming colder blood from the limbs, dense capillaries to prevent local freezing. Some animals like mammoths had a specialized form of hemoglobin that functioned well at low temperatures. Their blood vessels didn't just transport life, they defied the deadly cold of the Ice Age. On the glacial steppes, winds could rage like storms, blowing relentlessly day and night. A small body would lose heat quickly and be knocked over by the wind. Gigantic bodies needed pillar-like legs, thick bones to bear tons of weight, wide shoulders for moving through snow, strong spines to withstand constant cold. Look at the skeleton of a mammoth, a tibia as thick as a small tree trunk, a spinal column curved like a suspension bridge, huge ribs expanding to house massive lungs. Bones weren't just structures, they were weapons against the climate. In extreme cold, breath itself could freeze the pleural membranes of weaker animals. But megafauna had solutions: large noses, expanded sinuses, turbinates to warm incoming cold air, thick mucous membranes to retain moisture. Ice Age horses had long, narrow noses to heat the air. Mammoths had wide, complex nasal cavities like natural radiators. Every breath was a heating process. Ice Age grass was tough, rich in silica, extremely abrasive on teeth. So megafauna evolved specialized teeth, taller crowns, continuous vertical growth, thicker enamel, wide jaws for heavy grinding. Mammoths had flat teeth like giant grindstones. Wild Ice Age horses had the highest crowned teeth of any mammal. Woolly rhinos had jaws as strong as industrial crushers. Hard food demanded equally hard bodies. Cold region animals generally had small ears to reduce heat loss, avoid wind damage, prevent freezing. Mammoths had ears only 1/3 the size of African elephants. Ancient bison had ears hidden deep beneath their fur. Ice Age hyenas had rounded ears padded with fat, a tiny detail. Yet, the product of millions of years of evolution, glacial ground was soft, spongy, and prone to collapse. Megafauna evolved. Wide feet, like snowshoes, soft tissue pads to absorb cold, hard hooves for stability. Mammoths left footprints up to 60 centimeters wide. Ice Age horses had hooves nearly twice as thick as modern horses. Dire wolves had wide paws for long-distance snow running. Every step on the frozen steppe was a challenge. All these traits, massive bodies, thick fat, warm fur, strong bones, specialized blood, created a world that was colossal, powerful, unyielding. Megafauna were not ordinary animals. They were the crystallization of climate, the product of millions of years of trials, the kings of the frozen age, witnesses to moonless nights, warriors of the north wind and blizzards. When they walked, the earth trembled. When they roared, the steppe shuddered. When they fed, entire ecosystems moved with them. These were the titans who ruled the Ice Age, beings forged from a world encased in ice. Fact number 6. The survival war between predators and prey in the Ice Age. In a frozen world where the wind cut like blades of ice, no creature could afford to be weak. Every breath was a battle. Every step was a gamble. Every day survived was a victory against a merciless nature. The Ice Age steppe was not just a place of grass, wind, and snow. It was an arena of survival between the most powerful predators on Earth and colossal prey, built to resist death. Some battles erupted in seconds, sudden, brutal, and over quickly. Others lasted for hours, where endurance and intelligence decided fate. This is the story of those battles. Dire wolf, the giant wolf of the Ice Age, was not only strong, but clever and strategic. They did not hunt in a one wolf, one prey style. They hunted in packs, with each member playing a role, like warriors divided into squads: chasing group, flanking group, ambush group, finishing group. In the icy night, dire wolves did not chase prey with speed, but with endurance. They ran for kilometers, exhausting the prey before striking. Their prey included Ice Age horses, ancient saiga antelopes, megaglaciers, even young bison. The sound of their paws on snow was like relentless drumbeats, signaling a merciless pursuit. Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, was one of the most terrifying predators to ever exist. But what made it unique was not speed, long-distance chase, powerful bites like modern tigers. What made Smilodon legendary was its unparalleled technique for taking down prey. Smilodon hunted by hiding behind mounds, lurking under the shadow of mammoths, waiting for Ice Age horses to be careless, or lying behind clumps of stiff yellow-grey grass. When the moment came, it lunged with the force of a living hammer. Its strong front legs pinned the prey to the ground, while its 20 centimeters long fangs targeted vulnerable spots, the neck or windpipe. Smilodon did not run fast, but it ended the battle in a single strike. Few know that the Ice Age hosted the largest lions ever, taller than African lions, longer, more muscular, hunting in small groups. North American lions were not as aggressive as the hyenas, not as enduring as dire wolves, not as daring as Smilodon. but they were intelligent and flexible, picking the weakest prey and striking with explosive speed. One leap, one bite, then retreat to avoid other predators. Cold left no room for mistakes. Wounded prey might survive, but wounded predators almost certainly would not. In the world of hunter and hunted, one species stood on the boundary: ancient bison. Prey as formidable as any predator. They were twice the size of modern bison, armed with long, thick horns, muscular necks like pillars, able to run at 60 kilometers per hour, living in herds of hundreds. When hunted, they did not scatter in panic. They formed defensive circles, shielding the young in the center, horns facing outward, a herbivore with the spirit of a warrior. Many times, dire wolves or Ice Age lions had to retreat when facing a coordinated bison herd. Megaglaciers were not weak either. With antlers stretching 3.7 meters, they were weapons and signals. Smilodon attacked with explosive power. Megaglaciers defended by swinging antlers in arcs, kicking strongly, bursting with speed when needed. Encounters between the two often ended with Smilodon giving up due to lack of an opening, or Megaglaciers falling from a perfect strike. It was a duel between two of the Ice Age's most magnificent icons. In the Ice Age, no predator could attack an adult mammoth. Too large, too strong, living in herds, armed with curved tusks like natural weapons. Smilodon stayed away. Dire wolves avoided them. Lions dared not approach. But mammoths were not immortal. They had weaknesses: the young migration season, thin ice swamps, and the human hand. Our ancestors hunted mammoths not with brute strength, but with strategy. Pit traps, fire torches, long spears, driving prey into disadvantageous terrain. In the end, the strongest creature of the Ice Age fell to the weakest in body, but the smartest in mind. Dire wolves versus large woolly rhinos. An uneven battle, but nature is never predictable. Dire wolves did not attack head-on. They waited for old rhinos, injured rhinos, ones trapped in ice. At the right moment, they struck the hind leg, the rhino's weakest point. If the rhino lost balance, the battle was over. Conversely, one charge from a rhino could send a wolf flying 4-5 meters. It was a war of strength versus strategy, with no absolute ruler. Ice Age hyenas were bigger than African hyenas, with the strongest jaws of any mammal of their time. They didn't run fast, nor ambush skillfully, but they ate everything: carcasses, bones, marrow, frozen flesh, remnants left by wolf or lion packs. They were the steppes cleaners, but not to be underestimated. A hyena pack could repel dire wolves. Their chilling laughter in the cold night unnerved other predators. Their persistence allowed them to survive when other species went extinct. They won not with strength, but with endurance. It wasn't only large beasts that fought. The skies were also an arena. Golden eagles, ancient hawks, giant owls. Golden eagles could dive at speeds over 200 kilometers per hour, target the young, attack Ice Age hares, even attempt young deer. In the Ice Age, nowhere was safe, not even the sky. In that frozen world, predators did not always win. Prey did not always flee. Sometimes predators starved. Sometimes prey died from exhaustion, and every creature had to fight to survive. The Ice Age did not produce the strongest, but the most enduring, those who never gave up in the long, cold night. That world, with all its battles, brutal yet beautiful, has vanished, but its traces remain in fossils, in DNA, in ice thousands of meters deep, and in our imagination when we hear the winter wind sweeping across the plains. Fact number 8. The extinction of giant species. What really happened? Some stories have no clear ending. Some mysteries have no single answer. And there are moments in Earth's history that remind us Even knowing so much, to bow before the complexity of nature. The disappearance of Ice Age megafauna is one of those moments. Mammoths vanished. Woolly rhinoceroses vanished. Giant ground sloths vanished. North American lions vanished. Dire wolves vanished. Giant stag megaloceros vanished. Creatures that once dominated the frozen plains, shaking the ground with every step, disappeared within a few thousand years. Why? What extinguished an entire Titan world? The answer is not simple. It does not come from a single cause. It arises from a slow yet relentless chain of disruptions, from climate, from humans, from ecosystems, and from the creatures themselves. Around 12,000 years ago, the Earth began to warm. Temperatures rose modestly, only about 4-7 degrees Celsius. But in a frozen world, just a few degrees were enough to melt the ice, raise sea levels, shrink the frozen steppes, allow forests to regrow, increase humidity, change rainfall patterns. The Mammoth steppe, home to all the giant creatures, vanished, not all at once, but gradually. Year by year, cold golden grasses were replaced by taiga forests. Taiga forests gave way to mixed forests. Marshy soils dried. The vast frozen world shrank like the last breath of an era. Large creatures, accustomed to roaming open spaces, had nowhere to live. Vegetation changed so rapidly that low grasses disappeared. Shrubs grew thick. Forests took over. High-energy food sources vanished. Trees were not food for mammoths, ancient bison, or Ice Age horses. When the grass disappeared, all large herbivores were pushed to the brink. No food starvation reduced reproduction, population collapse. A domino chain began to fall. Smilodon, dire wolf, North American lions, the fearsome rulers of the frozen plains, suddenly lost their main food sources. No mammoths, no meat, no abundant wild horses, no hunts, no large bison herds, no ambush opportunities, no giant ground sloths, one of the easiest meat sources gone. Once prey went extinct, predators, no matter how strong, could not survive. This is a harsh rule. When the ecosystem collapses at the base, the apex of the pyramid also falls. Humans of the time did not hunt indiscriminately, they hunted to survive. Yet the arrival of Homo sapiens coincided with the extinction of many species. The main reasons: group hunting. Humans had strategy. They used traps, fire, drives, and pitfall traps, ranged weapons, spears, sharp stone-tipped javelins, and late-period bows, unmatched by any other species. Hunting young because they were easier to kill. This reduced the reproductive rate of large species. Increasing population, just a few thousand hunting families in an area enough to wipe out a species. Studies show if humans hunted 2-3% of mammoths each year, mammoth populations would go extinct within 500 years. Humans did not know they were killing an entire world. They were merely trying to survive. Large species shared a common weakness: long pregnancies, slow maturity, few offspring, long lifespans, low reproductive rates, thin populations. For example, mammoths, pregnant for 22 months, woolly rhinoceroses for 15-16 months, megaloceros bore only one calf. Giant ground sloths grew very slowly when the environment changed quickly, plus humans hunted, plus food decreased. They could not reproduce fast enough to save themselves. Some hypotheses suggest a small meteor impact occurred to 12,800 years ago, causing a short-term winter, vegetation collapse, mass animal deaths. Burned carbon traces and melted glass particles have been found worldwide. Though uncertain, this may have accelerated extinction, but it was not the sole cause. In a warming world, smaller species adapted better, ate less, needed less space, reproduced faster, tolerated warmth better. Smaller deer replaced giant deer. Smaller bison replaced ancient bison. Smaller horses replaced Ice Age horses. Nature leaves no gap, it just changes the players. Some species did not die immediately. They became isolated. Dwarf mammoths on Wrangel Island, megaglaciers in northern Europe, ancient bison in Siberia, ground sloths in South America, but small populations inbreeding, genetic diseases, weakened immunity, gradual, quiet deaths without witnesses, a death without roars, only prolonged silence. Not all megafauna died at once. There was no doomsday. Extinction occurred silently, gradually, over thousands of years. One species disappeared, another weakened, food chains broke, ecosystems collapsed. The story was like a long, sad symphony, where each small note vanished until only the wind blew through the grasses of a tangentless plain. When the Ice Age ended, the ice melted, and the Titan world melted with it. No mammoths roamed under the cold sun. No giant stags cut through frost with antlers spread like the rising sun. No dire wolves led packs through silvered winds. No North American lions ambushed in grey grass. The Ice Age world, with all its beauty, grandeur, and cruelty, had closed. Yet fossils, DNA in the ice, and memories in sediment layers continue to whisper their story. We once existed, we were strong, we ruled, we survived blizzards and long nights. But in the end, nature always changes, and we could not keep up. Fact number 8. The extinction of giant species. What really happened? Some stories have no clear ending. Some mysteries have no single answer. And there are moments in Earth's history that remind us, even knowing so much, to bow before the complexity of nature. The disappearance of Ice Age megafauna is one of those moments. Mammoths vanished. Woolly rhinoceroses vanished. Giant ground sloths vanished. North American lions vanished. Dire wolves vanished. Giant stag megaloceros vanished. Creatures that once dominated the frozen plains, shaking the ground with every step, disappeared within a few thousand years. Why? What extinguished an entire Titan world? The answer is not simple. It does not come from a single cause. It arises from a slow yet relentless chain of disruptions, from climate, from humans, from ecosystems, and from the creatures themselves. Around 12,000 years ago, the Earth began to warm. Temperatures rose modestly, only about 4-7 degrees Celsius. But in a frozen world, just a few degrees were enough to melt the ice, raise sea levels, shrink the frozen steppes, allow forests to regrow, increase humidity, change rainfall patterns. The Mammoth steppe, home to all the giant creatures, vanished, not all at once, but gradually. Year by year, cold golden grasses were replaced by taiga forests. Taiga forests gave way to mixed forests. Marshy soils dried. The vast frozen world shrank like the last breath of an era. Large creatures, accustomed to roaming open spaces, had nowhere to live. Vegetation changed so rapidly that low grasses disappeared. Shrubs grew thick. Forests took over. High-energy food sources vanished. Trees were not food for mammoths, ancient bison, or Ice Age horses. When the grass disappeared, all large herbivores were pushed to the brink. No food starvation reduced reproduction, population collapse. A domino chain began to fall. Smilodon, dire wolf, North American lions, the fearsome rulers of the frozen plains, suddenly lost their main food sources. No mammoths, no meat, no abundant wild horses, no hunts, no large bison herds, no ambush opportunities, no giant ground sloths, one of the easiest meat sources gone. Once prey went extinct, predators, no matter how strong, could not survive. This is a harsh rule. When the ecosystem collapses at the base, the apex of the pyramid also falls. Humans of the time did not hunt indiscriminately. They hunted to survive. Yet the arrival of Homo sapiens coincided with the extinction of many species. The main reasons: group hunting. Humans had strategy. They used traps, fire, drives, and pitfall traps, ranged weapons, spears, sharp stone-tipped javelins, and late-period bows, unmatched by any other species. Hunting young because they were easier to kill. This reduced the reproductive rate of large species. Increasing population, just a few thousand hunting families in an area enough to wipe out a species. Studies show if humans hunted 2–3% of mammoths each year, mammoth populations would go extinct within 500 years. Humans did not know they were killing an entire world. They were merely trying to survive. Large species shared a common weakness: long pregnancies, slow maturity, few offspring, long lifespans, low reproductive rates, thin populations. For example, mammoths, pregnant for 22 months, woolly rhinoceroses for 15–16 months, megaglaciers bore only one calf. Giant ground sloths grew very slowly when the environment changed quickly, plus humans hunted, plus food decreased. They could not reproduce fast enough to save themselves. Some hypotheses suggest a small meteor impact occurred to 12,800 years ago, causing a short-term winter, vegetation collapse, mass animal deaths. Burned carbon traces and melted glass particles have been found worldwide. Though uncertain, this may have accelerated extinction, but it was not the sole cause. In a warming world, smaller species adapted better, ate less, needed less space, reproduced faster, tolerated warmth better. Smaller deer replaced giant deer. Smaller bison replaced ancient bison. Smaller horses replaced Ice Age horses. Nature leaves no gap, it just changes the players. Some species did not die immediately. They became isolated. Dwarf mammoths on Wrangel Island, megaloceros in northern Europe, ancient bison in Siberia, ground sloths in South America, but small populations inbreeding, genetic diseases, weakened immunity, gradual, quiet deaths without witnesses, a death without roars, only prolonged silence. Not all megafauna died at once. There was no doomsday. Extinction occurred silently, gradually, over thousands of years. One species disappeared, another weakened, food chains broke, ecosystems collapsed. The story was like a long, sad symphony, where each small note vanished until only the wind blew through the grasses of a tangentless plain. When the Ice Age ended, the ice melted, and the Titan world melted with it. No mammoths roamed under the cold sun. No giant stags cut through frost with antlers spread like the rising sun. No dire wolves led packs through silvered winds. No North American lions ambushed in grey grass. The Ice Age world, with all its beauty, grandeur, and cruelty, had closed. Yet fossils, DNA in the ice, and memories in sediment layers continue to whisper their story. We once existed, we were strong, we ruled, we survived blizzards and long nights. But in the end, nature always changes, and we could not keep up. Fact number 9. Ancient ice caves. Where time sleeps in blue light. In the frozen world of the Ice Age, there were places where even the wind, the eternal wanderer, grew cautious. These were the ancient ice caves, deep blue tunnels sculpted by time, cold, and the silent flow of ice. Entering these caves is like stepping into another dimension, where light bends through layers of transparent ice. The air is so still you can hear the ice crack. The scent is sweet, cold, and ancient. The memory of the earth is wrapped within each layer of ice. These are not ordinary rock shelters. They are natural museums of time, where each tiny bubble in the ice is a fragment of hundreds of thousands of years of climate history. During the Ice Age, ice caves did not merely exist. They were part of the world, connecting the white snowy surface to the cold, hidden heart of the ice continent. Ancient ice caves were not created by humans. They were formed by the very breath of the ice. Three main mechanisms contributed. Meltwater flow in summer. The brief summer melted the ice. Tiny streams seeped into cracks, forming tunnels. Pressure from ice compression and sliding day. With ice layers kilometers thick, pressure pushed the ice to slide, creating hollow spaces underneath. Cold wind infiltrating crevices. Cold winds prevented snow from accumulating, opening up large cavities. Combined, these forces gave birth to ice caves. The interior space seems sculpted by an invisible artist. Ancient ice is crystal clear, yet absorbs red, green, and yellow hues. Only blue light penetrates deeply into the caves. The result, all light inside the ice becomes blue, deep, profound, cold blue, like the soul of winter itself. This produces a strange sensation. Time slows. Sounds seem distant. The outside world disappears. You do not merely see the blue. You hear it, feel it seep into your skin. The tiny air bubbles trapped in the ice hold. The breath of ancient forests. Ash from ancient volcanoes. Code 2 and O2. Traces of prehistoric atmospheres. Pollen carried from frozen steppes. Hibernating microbes. Dust from falling meteorites. Ancient methane gas. When scientists drill thousands of meters into the ice, they are opening letters from the past. Ancient temperatures, atmospheric composition, forest fire records, seasonal changes, volcanic eruptions, wind shifts. During the Ice Age, every bubble in the ice was a collected fragment of time. Breathing in an ancient ice cave is to inhale air trapped for thousands of years, dust from the Mammoth steppe, frozen moisture from the Ice Age, molecules once breathed by mammoths. The air in the cave does not live. It exists. The sensation makes anyone entering feel like a guest, lost in a moment not of the present world. No matter how cold the ice lives, it flows, contracts, expands, cracks, and repairs itself. Within the ice caves, small streams exist, flowing along the floor, falling from the ceiling, freezing into crystal chains, or forming glass-like pools. These streams are the lifeblood of the ice continent, carrying the brief warmth of summer deep into the ice. In the ancient ice, scientists have found bacteria, fungi, spores, single-celled organisms, fragmented DNA, all are sleeping. Some bacteria have survived 100,000 years in ice. Some spores awaken only when the temperature rises. Some DNA belongs to species extinct for tens of thousands of years. Ice caves are the planet's oldest life archive. One of the strangest experiences in an ice cave is the sound. Cracks, subtle tremors, echoes from deep below. The breathing of the ice. This sound may come from changing ice pressures, slow ice movement, new snow compressing the ice, wind passing through crevices. It sounds like distant drums, like faint thunder locked beneath the ground. It is a reminder, the ice continent never sleeps in peace. Ice Age humans did not live in ice caves, for they were too cold, but they used them as passageways, temporary shelters before blizzards, frozen meat storage, vantage points to observe large herds, sources of fresh water. However, ice caves were dangerous, prone to collapse, slippery, dark, with unpredictable sounds. Only the most experienced hunters dared venture deep. When the ice melted after the Ice Age, most ancient ice caves disappeared, collapsed, dissolved into the sea, or remained only as bare rock fissures. Today's ice caves in Greenland, Iceland, or Antarctica give a glimpse of this, but never the full picture. The ancient Ice Age ice caves were architectures erased by time. Only traces remain in sediments, ancient ice layers, air bubbles, and our imagination. Ancient ice caves are a testament to nature's patience. They were born from snow, grew under pressure, flowed like rivers, sang with the cracks of ice, recorded climate, preserved life, and eventually melted into the ocean. Everything in the ice cave is time made solid. When you touch a wall of transparent ice, you are touching the past, ancient climate, trapped breaths, the secrets of a vanished world. Ice caves are doors to history. Cold, blue, silent doors, opened in the Ice Age and closed as the world warmed. Fact number 10. Ice Age oceans. Cold currents, deep blue monsters, and the silent breath of the planet. If the Mammoth steppe was the heart of the Ice Age, then the cold oceans were the lungs, regulating the climate, nurturing ancient life, and holding more mysteries than any other place on Earth. Many think the Ice Age is just a story of snow, wind, and ice on land. But the truth is, the oceans were where it all began, and where the deepest memories of the Ice Age remain. Beneath the grey-blue waves lay massive ocean currents, icebergs towering like cliffs, giant sea creatures, and subtle changes that shaped the Earth's future climate. Step beneath that watery veil, where light becomes a fragile streak. During the coldest period of the Ice Age, tens of millions of trillions of tons of water were locked in continental ice sheets. The result: sea levels 120 meters lower, coastlines stretched far beyond today, many straits disappeared, many islands became mainland mountains, shallow seas turned into dry steppes. The oceans were smaller, but even more crucial, they became the planet's climate regulator. Icebergs of that era were unlike modern ice flows. They were as large as buildings, over 100 meters thick, kilometers long, pale blue or silvery white, forming ice islands drifting across the seas. When cold winds blew from the continents, they moved like silent warships. The cracking of ice echoed like thunder. When two icebergs collided, the sound carried across the sea. The ocean resembled a battlefield among colossal ice flows. Ocean temperatures were 5–10 degrees Celsius lower than today. This changed everything. Cold water, denser, sank to the bottom, creating deep ocean conveyor belts spanning the planet. Currents stronger, slower, but more stable, transporting salt, heat, nutrients. CO2, snow on land fed by moisture from cold oceans. The ocean fed the ice, and the ice fed the ocean in a continuous cycle. No ocean, no ice age. The oceans were home to whales similar to modern species, but larger and stronger due to rich plankton populations. Species like ancient grey whales, prehistoric blue whales, Ice Age humpbacks, ancient sperm whales. They migrated thousands of kilometers, crossed frigid currents, used blubber to resist the cold, lived in small but cohesive pods, communicated with sounds, traveling hundreds of kilometers. Among drifting ice, Ice Age blue whales appeared like living mountains moving through the dark ocean. Creatures living between water and ice thrived. Ancient walruses, long, curved tusks to haul themselves onto ice, 10 centimeters thick blubber, teeth adapted to eat cold water mollusks. Ice Age seals, a thick fur, large eyes for dark waters, breath holding over 40 minutes. They were the shadowy phantoms around ice flows, hunting and surviving in frigid waters. Fish under Ice Age oceans were unlike those in warm seas, grey-blue or silvery white, bodies coated in antifreeze lipids, blood with natural antifreeze proteins, moved slowly to conserve energy, large eyes to capture scarce light. Some lived beneath meters of ice, where no light ever penetrated. They proved that life can survive in the harshest conditions. Storms were stronger than today. When cold continental air met ocean moisture, massive storms formed. Snow fell on the sea, Winds whirled at 150-200 kilometers per hour. Ice floes spun in whirlpools. Waves surged meters high. An Ice Age ocean storm was not just a storm. It was a roaring machine of cold. Below 1 kilometer depth, water pitch black, pressure 100 times greater, temperature near freezing. No light penetrated, yet life persisted. Ancient worms, cold water jellyfish, transparent crustaceans, bioluminescent deep-sea fish, cold-resistant algae. Even in darkness so absolute, the ocean maintained a silent heartbeat. When a whale died and sank, its tens of tons body became a colossal nutrient source. Bone-eating worms appeared. Bacteria broke down fat. Crabs came to feed. Deep-sea fish followed. A single whale skeleton could sustain thousands of organisms for over 50 years. The ocean was where death became life. Standing on an Ice Age shore, one would witness cold mist, grey-silver waters, cracking ice, distant whale shadows, seals resting on ice, storms on the horizon, and winds carrying the chill of the deep ocean. The Ice Age ocean was not a place of death. It was where Earth breathed in cold rhythm, regulated climate, nurtured life, and served as the frozen soul covering the planet. It was cold, it was dark, it was deep, but it lived, powerful, silent, eternal.